Hello and welcome to First Post Game Plan. 2016 is coming to an end, and what a fantastic year it has been for Formula One. To discuss all the happenings, roller coaster in the sport, we have with us Mithila Mehta from Inside Line F1 podcast, who regularly writes for us and analyzes the fast-paced game. Welcome, Mithila. Wonderful to have you back.
Thank you so much.
And I couldn't have asked for a better topic than wrapping up the entire year for Formula One. You know, when the year began, there were a lot of talks about how it's not going to be competitive because of Mercedes' dominance. But the competition came from within Mercedes, with Hamilton versus Rosberg highlighting the entire season, so to say, till the last race.
So, Xenia, unexpectedly, it's been a really exciting season. This is the third season that Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton, they've been teammates. And, you know, the first two seasons, it was a Hamilton dominant show, you know. And Nico Rosberg played the role of the challenger, but he could never quite keep up with the sheer talent and pace of Lewis Hamilton. And many people expected that 2016 would be a repeat, you know, a sequel 3.0 along similar lines. But thankfully for us, the fans, thankfully for the sport, that was not the case. It has been one of the most unpredictable and exciting seasons. Well, we knew that it was going to be a Mercedes on top at the end. We just didn't know which one.
And I think that sort of speculation, that unpredictability was something fans and the sport really needed. You know, we discussed about how while they were wearing the same colors, they were basically absolute rivals on field, on track. They did everything, slowing down, trying to take over. Even a crash in Spain. They fought tooth and nail for Rosberg to emerge the, for many, surprise champion.
So, picking up on a couple of things that you mentioned, Xenia. So this was the longest ever season of Formula One. There were 21 races. And because it was the longest ever season, it gave us, you know, plenty of time to have the pendulum swing both ways and back. So, you know, there was enough scope for both of them to slug it out, to fight together. Rosberg got off to an amazing start, which was a relief for many because it was then clear that, hey, this is not going to be a Lewis Hamilton whitewash. The Spain incident, I'm going to take a few seconds and talk about that. That was a defining moment for the season and for the sport. Both the Mercedes drivers, they were in 1 and 2 in Spain, and they came together and they collided. Now, you know, if any other team had been at that place as Mercedes was in Spain, it would have been very likely that they would have issued some sort of order saying that, hey, the drivers cannot race as freely anymore. Because ultimately, it is a question of their points, their reputation, and, you know, they don't want to lose out on any of that. But Mercedes, you know, they took the sporting road instead. And they said that, you know, this is a sport and such things happen. It's a racing incident. And they let the drivers race. And because of that, we were, you know, in for an absolute treat through the remainder of the season. I'm only wondering that, you know, if Mercedes had taken another decision, the other decision in Spain, how the season would have been so boring.
Well, Spain stood out for that reason, but I'll tell everyone that Mithila likes the Spanish Grand Prix for a completely different reason, because it gave us the legend of Max Verstappen. Mad Max, well, he debuted in that race, thank Kivat, I think, and went on to win it thanks to Mercedes. And from then on, it's just been one hell of a ride with Verstappen.
One hell of a ride. So Max Verstappen, he caught attention as a rookie last season. And but when Danny Kivat was demoted to Toro Rosso by Red Bull Racing, and we had a Max Verstappen promotion, you know, to the big team, there was a lot of pressure in a way, and a lot of people were wondering, because the entire Danny Kivat demotion, which was one of the other interesting and important stories of this season, a lot of people were wondering whether it was fair, whether it was a just move for Danny Kivat, who had just finished on the podium, in fact, when he got demoted. But anyway, when Max Verstappen debuted in the Red Bull Racing team in Spain, and he took victory on his Red Bull Racing debut, like, that was big news. And so much so that, you know, the rest of the season saw Max Verstappen go from strength to strength. He had the dubious honor of his overtaking defense move, the Verstappen as we like to call it, and it was banned by the FIA. So, you know, that's quite a dubious honor, but yeah, that's Max Verstappen for you. He's been an absolute sizzler on the circuit.
And that's definitely your highlight of the season, I am sure. In fact, one thing what I really appreciated with Verstappen is that he didn't care. He was ready to overtake everyone. Mexico also, as he showed in Mexico, and his teammate Ricciardo, who is this consistent, well-performing guy, unless of course he wins and then he takes his shoe off.
Sure.
Together they made Red Bull this really, a great cocktail, so to say.
Actually, Kunal and I have spoken about that on our podcast, how Red Bull Racing is a great mixer. They've just added so much of a fizz to that entire Mercedes mix. Whenever Mercedes made a mistake, like in Spain, it was Red Bull Racing who was there to pick up the pieces. And through the season, they've consistently, piled on the pressure onto Mercedes. So Mercedes couldn't afford to get too comfortable in the front. Max Verstappen, he's been an absolute rock star through the season. I have no better word to describe him. His drive in Brazil, Xenia, where, he was pushed to the back of the grid for various reasons, and he drove through, overtaking everyone through the wet and giving everyone a bloody good scare. That's absolutely the spirit of that driver. He can get past anyone and everyone. We've seen him overtake Nico Rosberg on track. And we've seen how scared Nico Rosberg was to overtake him in Abu Dhabi. So definitely one driver to look out for. And I dare say we're looking at a future world champion.
Well, hopefully we get to see that soon, because the more the competition in this sport, I think it just makes it more exciting. And speaking of competition, one thing we've consistently spoken about, and I remember you particularly praising the one very team that got really competitive this year, Force India. 2 podiums for them you mentioned, and coming fourth ahead of a lot more established teams. So a fantastic run for the, Indian Connect team.
So this season has been so special, from the Force India perspective. They've had an amazing season. They've beaten championship winning teams. They've beaten Williams, they've beaten McLaren, and they've literally made their presence felt in the sport. This is a season when Sergio Perez was on the podium twice, which is massive. And, just for the sake of comparison, Williams only got 1 podium this season and McLaren got none. So this was literally a season where everyone, was like, hey, Force India is a team to look out for. In fact, Sergio Perez has also said that we could hope for, similarly great things next season. Maybe they could give the top 3 a run for their money. So we don't know, because there are new rules coming to play next year. But this season has given us just so much hope about Force India, their potential and what they can do. As an Indian fan, I think that's amazing.
Absolutely. I think Perez will be continuing. Although I must ask you, how much do you think Hulkenberg will be missed by Force India? I'll tell our viewers that Mithila on her podcast has spoken to both Hulkenberg and Perez through the course of the season. And you must tell us, how much of a difference it's going to make when that team sort of breaks.
Yeah, so in fact, Kunal and I were lucky to speak to both Perez and Hulkenberg on the podcast, and we had a fairly humorous conversation about them, about their favorite radio messages, which I think we should also talk about in a bit. But definitely the team is going to miss Hulkenberg. He's definitely been someone who's been reliable, helping the team grow from strength to strength, and he's been around for a while, so that dynamic that he would have established with the team and with everyone in the garage is obviously important. I think he's going to be pretty bummed in the sense that that podium, which has been missing him for so long, it didn't happen. It didn't happen this season either, and his teammate managed to notch up 2 podiums. So I'm sure that hurts somewhere. He'll take some consolation in the fact that he's still the Le Mans champion that Perez never managed to be. But his move to Renault is a very well thought out career move. Like they say, you can't do the same thing again and again and hope for different results. So he's taken a big gamble with his move, and let's see where it lands.
Yeah, well, that gives us even more things to look forward to in the coming season. But you mentioned radio messages, and I have to put you on the spot. Your favorite radio message?
Oh my! So okay. Before I get to my favorite radio message, I have to say that the season started with the FIA clamping down on radio messages, and they were like. They were really hard on the drivers, I think. And for example, we saw Lewis Hamilton struggle with his, he couldn't figure out the car setting in Baku, and he lost a bunch of valuable points because of that. After that, the FIA kind of let loose on the entire radio message clampdown. and they weren't as strict about it. But it's been so exciting because we've had so much entertainment through the radio this season. Even when races have been damn boring, we've had the radio that has saved our lives. My favorite radio message, I'm really partial to Kimi Raikkonen because he happens to be one of my favorite drivers. So it was hilarious when he said something along the lines of to his team that, hey, I can't go any faster, I'm in the pit lane. It was typical Kimi humor.
Absolutely.
Zenia, what is your favorite radio message?
Hammer time! I think Lewis Hamilton is the most entertaining characters on track, and when you have Mercedes, the team being just as entertaining and talking to him in his
I think he said something like, hey, that was a sexy lap after his qualifying lap. pretty funny.
Always fun to listen to him. But maybe not so in press conferences when he has his phone out.
Oh yeah. It's something interesting that Formula One did this year for the first time. They did a live interview via the radio with Nico Rosberg after his qualifying run in Suzuka. I think that was pretty interesting as well, how the radio can be used for not just in-race entertainment.
So we definitely want the radio messages to continue.
Oh,
I remember Mithila and Kunal talking about how they should be sold on iTunes.
They should actually. We were talking about how you should have a special a podcast or a stream where you can only hear the funniest radio messages, Kimi Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso and all the other humorous characters we have in Formula One.
In fact, I think now that we've spoken about what we want, that is the radio messages, I'll tell you one thing I definitely don't want in the next season.
Tell me.
The shoey.
I was wondering if you were going to go there.
Right. So I have to ask you, what do you think about the shoey? Because I think that's one of the most enduring images from this season for me.
Well, enduring if... I think honestly the shoey was a highlight on the podium. And if you were at the receiving end of the shoey, I think all those people, whether it's been Nico Rosberg or Mark Webber, they're going to agree that it's definitely something that needs to go in 2017. Though as a fan, I loved the shoey. I think it was hilarious. And it was really funny for me when the shoey popped up in Nico Rosberg's championship celebrations as well. That guy, Daniel Ricciardo, has a way of just bringing it in, man.
Absolutely. In fact, I believe Rosberg did say, I hope Ricciardo doesn't win anymore, just for that very reason.
It was funny in the Mexican Grand Prix, how there was this whole confusion about who finished third, whether it was Vettel or Verstappen or Ricciardo. And it seemed like the FI did everything they could to keep Daniel Ricciardo off the podium, and keep the shoey off the podium, more importantly.
Do you know something we don't about that particular podium?
I wish I did, but...
But while those were definitely the high points, I think, for fans especially, I think one of the more sad parts of the season were the retirements we saw.
Yeah.
During the season, we had a very emotional Massa at Sao Paulo and then Button, both a world champion and an almost world champion. Oh. Legends of the sport, definitely, and both of us bid adieu in 2016. Well, so far, a sabbatical adieu at least.
Sure. So it was definitely sad to see these legends of the sport going. Jenson Button will be remembered as the absolute gentleman in the paddock, and he's been so good for the sport, for the image of the sport overall. And well, he's going to be around, sabbatical or no sabbatical, he'll definitely be around giving his opinions and all of that in the paddock as a commentator. And yes, he was a world champion, so always sad to see a world champion going. Felipe Massa, I guess he'll be remembered as the most famous number 2 driver. Unfortunately, that's what his career is going to end at. He never won the World Championship. But still, he's been a fighter. He's won races. He's had some pretty amazing seasons all through. And you know what? We're going to miss him. We're just going to miss him because Button and Felipe have been constants on the grid. So it almost feels like an era of motor racing is drawing to an end. Xenia, thank God Kimi Raikkonen has not decided to retire.
Well, not yet, because we've seen this season that you don't have to be in the season to announce your retirement. And with that, we have to talk about the shock retirement. Honestly, I didn't see that coming. Rosberg calling it quits just hours before winning his before the whole celebration gala dinner.
So Nico Rosberg was the biggest shock, the biggest surprise, the
Not
biggest
his victory, in fact, but his retirement.
that I didn't see it coming moment. It was his retirement. And that could be one of the talking points of 2016 that people will always remember. The world champion who
The
retired.
year he became the world champion, the year he called it quits.
So we've talked a lot about the Hamilton versus Rosberg battle. We've spoken about it in the live. We've done a podcast on it. And truth be told, Nico Rosberg was in that place where he had reached his pinnacle. He has said that, several times, that he had achieved everything he wanted to in motorsport, and he's retiring an absolutely content man. He's also retiring after finally beating Lewis Hamilton for the first time ever in his career. So, I don't think there was anything more that was left for him to do. People could argue, of course, that, hey, he could have gone on to be a 2, 3, 4-time world champion, but that's a personal choice. And in a way, I think the one person who's going to be most annoyed from this is Lewis Hamilton. Because he doesn't get to have the last word anymore,
Yeah, well, and the Hamilton we know will definitely, take that seriously. Although, but, now that we've spoken about Hamilton, we had a viewer question come in, Mithila,
Sure.
who wanted to know what happens at Mercedes next, who next after Rosberg.
Sure.
Now, we've discussed that quite often, and well, Bottas looks to be the most likely candidate, but I want to twist the question and present it. Can Hamilton work with somebody who's not Rosberg and have the same drive? Won't it be a little too easy for him now?
Well, that's definitely a valid question. We know that Valtteri Bottas is all but confirmed to drive next season for Mercedes, and we should hear that announcement soon. Interestingly, we were rooting for the likes of Vettel, Alonso, maybe even a Red Bull Racing driver like Ricciardo to come in and be paired alongside Hamilton. Not only would have pushed Lewis Hamilton to constantly strive to do better, but it would have also been great entertainment for us as fans. The thought of Valtteri Bottas in the championship winning seat next to Lewis Hamilton, it's a bit strange, honestly. I'm not sure if Bottas has completely proven himself, being worthy of that seat in the first place. I'm not sure he'll be even able to keep up with Lewis Hamilton. And this is a Lewis Hamilton who has lost the World Championship this year. So it's going to be hammer time, race to, I think, 5,000 next year. He is going to be relentless. It would have definitely been more exciting to see a proven world champion in that seat. We're not going to get to see it, unfortunately. Though maybe, fingers crossed, there'll be another miracle.
That would have been my dream pairing, man. But now that you mentioned Vettel, we can't end this show without talking about Ferrari. It's established that Vettel and Raikkonen are two of the best drivers of this generation.
Sure.
Ferrari has them. What do they do this season? Basically, not a lot.
So Ferrari themselves have admitted that they made an absolute fool of themselves this season. And it was funny because they kept issuing all these press statements talking about how quick they are and how they're closing the gap to Mercedes and a whole lot of PR talk, and nothing of that translated. So yeah, it's going to be really embarrassing. They've had some really bad strategic mistakes and they've robbed their drivers of podium positions. They never won a single race this season. So it's actually pretty shameful on a results front. The only silver lining is that they ended 2016 with a podium for Sebastian Vettel. So, they'll have like this tiny consolation third prize going into winter.
Well, but they have one season to make sure that the Iceman and the German champion, they prove the reason why they came to Ferrari. But, I think that was a question that a viewer also asked. Atul, there you go. You have your answer. What next for Vettel? Well, hopefully a better year than this.
So in fact, this season has not been very great for Vettel. And in fact, Ferrari have specifically asked him, to be less agitated next season. And we saw a lot of that on the radio. All his outbursts and his outburst against Charlie Whiting, actually. That's a funny thing that happened this season. Next season, he just needs to keep calm, keep his head down and drive his best. We know that Kimi Raikkonen actually beat him in qualifying head-to-head this season. So, Sebastian Vettel also has room to up his pace in 2017.
Right, so that gives us so many things to look forward to in the coming season.
I can't wait.
And I think the biggest hope for us as Formula One fans is that give us an equally, if not more, competitive season. and give us a little bit more of your classic Vettel, Raikkonens, and a better of a Force India. I think that's your wish list, hopefully as well.
It would be great to see, a scarlet car in the reckoning again, fighting for podiums and victories and all of that. And I know that a lot of our viewers are Ferrari fans, so I think they'd also be hoping for the same.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Mithila. Wonderful to discuss Formula One with you as always.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to all our viewers for your questions and for tuning in. Thank you.